We are so honored to have today Nelson Mandela's granddaughters. You have such lovely names. I don't want to mispronounce them. If you would be so kind to repeat them for me.
Hi, I'm Zaziwe Manaway and Swati Dlamini.
They are such lovely names. Do they have specific meanings?
Mine means hope. My grandfather named me whilst he was in prison, and he decided to name me Zaziwe, which means hope, and it means hope for South Africa, hope for the future, and yeah, that's my name in a nutshell.
Oh,
my full name is Zama Swazi, but my family calls me Swati, and it means I belong to the Swazis. I was the only child of my parents who was born outside of Swaziland.
Well, ladies, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to me today. First of all, if you don't mind, I'd like to begin by asking you how your grandfather is doing. I know that he was hospitalized during the month of December.
Our grandfather's great. He's home with the family. We see him very often. We actually saw him before we came out here to New York to promote the show, and he's great. He loves spending time with us and his great-grandchildren, so he's in good spirits. We're very happy, and thank you for asking about him.
Oh, well, I'm so glad to hear, and please give him our regards.
We will.
You mentioned the show, of course, which is entitled Being Mandela and will be airing on Cozy TV. I'm curious, how did the idea for this show come about?
The idea for the show came about, we were approached by two American producers who were in South Africa at the time, and they asked us if we'd be interested. And we took a lot of time to, decide whether or not we actually wanted to do this, and we consulted very much with our family. And once we made the decision, we thought it would be a great way for people to see us as the next generation of the Mandela family. That it would give the viewers sort of an account into our daily lives, our family, some of our conflicts, and our personal aspirations. We're both mothers, we're both women, we're both, business owners, and we entrepreneurs. And we also wanted to showcase our country, South Africa, 23 years after our democracy, show what our grandfather fought so hard for, to liberate our country, to free our country. Yeah.
What was your grandfather's reaction to the show?
Well, our grandfather has always said to us that the Mandela name is our name and that we should treat it with pride and dignity, and he entrusts us to live up to his legacy. So he's very, very proud of us. He supports us. Actually, our grandmother's part of the show as well, and you'll see her a lot on the show because we're so close. So both our parents support us.
Is it likely that your grandfather might make an appearance on the show?
Well, our grandfather's not directly on the show, but you hear a lot of references about him. He's so significant in our lives. We actually wouldn't even have a show without him. So, you'll hear about him, you'll hear how he's doing, but you won't directly see him. You see lots of extended members of the family, my grandmother, my aunts, my mom, all the children, our cousins. So you get a really good insight into our family.
You mentioned, obviously, we will get a sense of your daily lives, your families, the conflicts. I'm curious, does the Mandela family have a regular, typical family gathering, let's say, around the holidays?
We do. We do. Every Christmas, we travel to my grandfather's home, and we spend a few days with him, just us, just the family. And we're very much into our Sunday lunches. Yeah. Sunday lunch is a very big thing for us. So we like to gather at least once a week to just catch up. So
I understand that both of you ladies basically grew up in the United States because of your father being imprisoned, but were able to go back in your teen years. I'm curious, what was it like growing up in the United States as Nelson Mandela's granddaughters? Well,
our parents had an opportunity to go to Boston University, so it was obviously the right decision for them to take at the time because our country at the time was going through a lot of turmoil, and it wasn't the best environment to raise children. So when the opportunity arose, they brought us to Boston, and it was a great way to grow up. It created some sort of normalcy in our life.
You know, we'd go to school, we'd come back, and our mother would be home. We wouldn't have to worry if we'd find them home or not. And, you know, we love Boston. We have such fond memories of Boston. We still have our friends from there. So it was a great period in our lives, and we're just so proud that we grew up here.
Was it interesting to have that legacy behind you and to be in the States? And did people ask you much about that? Did you have an understanding of what was happening in South Africa?
We were still very young when we moved to the States, and we lived there. But we always had a sense that our grandfather was doing something important. I mean, our grandfather was in prison, and you know, we the only time we would ever get to see him was, you know, once a year when we would go back home. So we knew that there was something that he was fighting for, and our mother, you know, always reminded us that, you know, everything that we have that we can enjoy, we should be grateful for, because our grandfather's in prison and he can't enjoy the same luxuries that we can. So you know, and she always tried to make sure that, you know, we were quite sheltered, and she tried to create a sort of very like normal environment for us to grow up in. And I think, you know, growing up in Boston was very much a place for us to be able to kind of like live a normal life.
You lived a very normal life here, but when you think about the activism, the proactive nature, how passionate your grandfather was, I'm curious, what are your thoughts about all of the work that he did and the difference that he made and continues to make?
Well, I mean, it's very testament to where we are now as a country, and even where we are now as individual, as women. You know, we can make choices now. You know, we have freedoms, and we can enjoy certain freedoms. Both our grandparents have dedicated and sacrificed a lot of their lives, most of their lives, to give us the ability to choose what we want to do with our lives. So we can never repay them for everything that they did, but our country has come so far. There's just so much that we can be proud of, that we can look at. Our democracy is a very young democracy, but it's thriving, it's working, and our country has come such a long way. And the viewer will get to see a lot of South Africa and see how we enjoy, you know, a lot of the freedoms that our grandparents both fought for.
You mentioned that both of you have children. Do they have an understanding of the legacy behind them, the family that they're a part of, and the struggles that your family members went through?
Our kids are very young. I mean, I've got a 1-year-old, and I've got a 3-year-old as much as a 4-year-old.
So they've seen pictures,
They've seen pictures. I mean, you know, I've got an old son who's 13 here, and he's beginning to understand the history of our country, and he's beginning to understand, you know, what Nelson Mandela is and how his great-grandfather changed the course of our history. And that's why we actually decided to go back to Robben Island, and you'll see that on the show, just to teach our children, you know, just to begin teaching our children about our legacy so that they don't forget what their great-grandparents sacrificed for them. You know, so we are teaching them, and it's valuable to us, and that's just our way of continuing our legacy. We just have to. We have no choice but to.
You mentioned Robben Island, where your grandfather was in prison for 18 years. How emotional was that, and what were some of your thoughts?
Going back to Robben Island was very, very emotional. I mean, that place holds a very painful history for our family, so the decision to go there wasn't an easy decision to take. And just being in the cell where my grandfather was for 18 years was very, very emotional for us. I mean, we were in there for about 10 minutes, so just the thought of him spending 18 years in such a small, confined space, in such a cold, dark space, just because he believed in something, he believed in our country, he believed in freedom and justice for all, was extremely, extremely emotional for us. But then again, you know, it made us proud to, you know, to come from such a man who had so much determination, who had so much drive to fight for something that he believed in. So it was a very, very special moment for us, and the viewer will get to see that and will be able to take that journey with us when they watch the show.
I know I've always admired your grandfather just because of the dignity and the way he handles himself. And I always think, gosh, to spend that amount of time in prison and not feel any sense of bitterness, but rather to then embrace, you know, his native land and do so much and become president. I'm curious, you can kind of take a step back. You weren't there as that had happened. Did you hold any bitter feelings? Were you upset, angry about what had been done? Or just you can kind of understand where your grandfather stood in terms of his thoughts?
I think for us, we never really got to spend a lot of time with our grandfather, even when he was released from prison. But, we understood that he had to make the sacrifice. He tells us all the time that, I don't belong to you, I belong to the country, and I've made this sacrifice. And so over time, I think we got to understand that, he was doing something for our futures, for my children's future. So, the sacrifice of not being able to spend a lot of time with him, I think is something that is very small, and, in comparison to, what he was trying to do and what he's been able to achieve.
You just mentioned your futures, and I know that both of you have very bright futures. One of you is interested in kickstarting a foundation. I know the other is interested in fashion designing. Can you give us just a brief synopsis of how your projects are going?
Yeah, on the show you'll actually get to see us, working on our fashion label called Long Walk to Freedom, which is based off my grandfather's autobiography. And, it's something that we're very proud of. We also have a charity that is associated with with Long Walk to Freedom, and it's a charity that very much focuses on youth issues, on social issues, and bringing those to light and talking about them. My grandfather was very passionate about young people, and he always says that our generation is the next generation to lead and take forward the ideals that he fought for. So you'll see a lot of us, working on the brand and developing the strategy. We're trying to get into a U.S. retailer, so you'll see us, traveling to the U.S. to do that. You'll also see us, working on, I'm currently in the process of publishing a book for my grandmother, her prison diary. And then you'll also get to see a lot of South Africa and the beautiful landscape. We go shark diving in Cape Town for the first time. We take our trip back to Robben Island where my grandfather was imprisoned. We go to Swaziland, which is very much a cultural, traditional experience, which is where our father is from. So it's very sort of diverse, and there's so many cultural experiences that the viewer will get to experience.
Well, ladies, we are certainly looking forward to it. Congratulations on this project. Good luck on the program entitled Being Mandela, which will be airing on Cozy TV. In fact, the show debuts on February 10th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And just thank you, ladies, for taking the time to talk to me. It's been such a pleasure. And just congratulations and good luck with all of your upcoming projects.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having us.
Our pleasure.